Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Rose City Politics. It is February the 9th. Our regular panel tonight includes myself, John Lidke, Doug Sartori, and Don Merrifield Jr. Doug, how you doing?
Great.
We're both sharing Windsor's beautiful background from warmer days as our Zoom backgrounds.
It's
and
true.
Don, how you doing?
I'm good from my undisclosed location in the Mojave Desert.
It's so much more fun to think of you just sitting in like a server farm in the Mojave Desert.
I'm mining Bitcoin out here. I'm going to hit it rich one of these days.
Well, and we have a guest panelist tonight, Jason Dupuis. Jason, how you doing?
Not too bad. Yourself, John?
Really well. We're glad to have you here because you've got expertise in the topic at hand. We are going to be talking about Ward 6 because we are on episode 6 of our Ward Watch 2022. So episode 6, that means Ward 6. And I wasn't here last week for episode 5. I had to go up to Ottawa, met some new friends, brought them down here when I got back. So I've got some time now to be able to do it live.
Did you leave your truck up there or did you bring it back with you?
No, I brought it back. Now I had a friend who told me though, hey, I just got my new AZ license. So if you or your family needs any medical advice, I'm able to start dishing it out, which was a really, really good joke. But
hilarious.
We will get into this though. Support us on Patreon at patreon.com/Rose City Politics. We are in BizX magazine that just dropped. We talk about where are we going from here moving forward throughout the rest of the year. We're on all of your favorite social media and podcasting apps, and Rose City Politics is able to broadcast live on tape thanks to the kind support of Leuna 625, building better communities. Without missing a beat, these are always busy shows. Doug, I'm just going to hand it over to you, and we'll let you do a little bit of table settings for us as the format dictates.
Okay, we are talking about the electoral history and demographics of Ward 6. So starting back in 1991, the pre-2010 figures here are from the old Ward 5, which was a bit larger than Ward 6, but includes almost all of the current Ward 6. In 1991, Rick Limoges won first place, 9439 votes. Second place, remember pre-2010, second place got a seat, was Tom Wilson, was 6493. That pattern continued in 94, Rick Limoges and Tom Wilson. 1997, Rick Limoges and Tom Wilson. We had a by-election in 1999. Eddie Francis won that with 1,822 votes over closest challenger Joanne Gignac with 1,507 votes. In 2000, Eddie Francis achieved the single highest vote total in this ward since 1991, 10,797 votes. Tom Wilson was second with 7,801. In 2006, Mr. Francis was off to greener pastures. Joanne Gignac won the seat with 9,220 votes. Percy Hatfield got the second spot. After 2010, Mr. Hatfield would move on and represent a different ward in the city. Joanne Gignac won in 2010 with 6562. She won again in 2014 with 5,395. And in 2018, she won again with 3,709 votes to challenger Jeff Denomy's 2,682. By far the nearest challenge that, that Ms. Gignac faced. Okay, the demography of Ward 6. Total population in 2016, 22,288. Just a tiny amount of growth over 2011 with 22,237. Courtesy of friend of the show, Fraser Fathers, who is our source for all of these statistics. He got in touch today to let us know that the 2021 census numbers are out, and Ward 6 has 22,771 people living in it now. That is a growth of 483 people, 2% growth compared to 5.7% growth for the city overall. The average population density per square kilometer in Ward 6 is 5,512, putting it on the higher end. 17.98% of the population is under 19. 22.92% of the population is over 65. That figure, I'm just quickly comparing it to some of the other wards and filling a little time while I do. That is the highest proportion of people over 65 of any ward in the city. 1,385 single parent families, 78% of them are led by women. Median income after tax in Ward 6, $32,922. The after-tax average income, $38,685, a 13.85% low income rate, one of the lowest in the city. 9.4% of the population is in the bottom income decile, the bottom 10% of wage earners, and 7.2% of the population is in the top income decile, the top 10% of wage earners, which puts it roughly in the middle of the pack, although at the higher end. There is a division between the have and have not wards. Wards 8, 5, 4, 3, and 2 all have 5% or less of their population in the top income decile. Ward 6 at 7.2% puts it at the higher end of the spectrum, but lower than wards 7, 9, 10, or 1. And finally, 4.1% of public transit users, 4.1% of commuters use public transit to reach work. So that is the electoral and demographic landscape of Ward 6.
Thanks, Doug. Now, going through that, what stands out for you most about these things? I mean, it's a unique ward.
It is a unique ward. I think that I think of wards 1 and 6 as pretty comparable. I tend to think of them as a unit. What will they think in wards 1 and 6? And I think that there's truth in that because both wards sort of skew conservative politically in a similar way. Both wards have higher incomes. And they are the two highest voter turnout wards. But I think when you dig into the details, you can see some of the differences that are really quite illuminating. Ward 1 has its share of senior citizens, but not as many as Ward 6. And Ward 6 has its share of high income folks, but not nearly as many as Ward 1. So, I think you can see that both of those things, income and age, will tend to result in more conservative leaning votes at the municipal level. And also higher incomes will do the same. So I think that the two wards, although they have quite a few differences, they kind of land in the same place politically. The other piece that I think is really interesting is the stagnation of population in Ward 6. Ward 6 has not significantly grown in population in a decade or more. And I think that's pretty interesting. At some point, we will have a realignment in the city. Some wards are starting to get to be significantly more populous than other wards. So if we see a realignment, presumably that means that Ward 6 will have to grow in order to achieve the necessary population numbers. So depending on where that growth happens, it could significantly change the landscape in Ward 6.
Yeah, thank you. And the realignment, we talked about this the last show that I was on. So I guess for Ward 4, the consultant, when the board system was changed in 2010, he recommended that this be reviewed every 2 elections. So we've obviously gone past that now. So, things are changing, more dramatically, just because time keeps going by. Jason, this is your backyard, so to speak, right? Or quite literally, I'm not sure where you live specifically as of today, but in 2014, you ran here. What are your observations about, the ward where it stands now, before we get into the politics of it, I guess, trying to stick with the demography of it and whatnot?
Yeah, no, I think Doug did a pretty good job breaking it down. I would kind of observe that there was kind of 2 different Ward 6s. You do have that break at Wyandotte that might demographically change like the political leanings. When you're looking at that north of Wyandotte, that closer to Riverside Drive, and the Riverside Drive groups, you're going to see higher incomes, definitely a more conservative bend. And from my experience in 2014, higher voting, they're higher likelihood to vote, right? And then you get to that south side of Wyandotte, which you're going to see a lot more blue collar workers. A lot of auto workers live in my area. A lot of teachers, like nurses, stuff like that, groups that you're not necessarily going to see leaning in the conservative direction, at least the way we see it on the partisan spectrum. And like ultimately there's like, when we were talking about the realignment, like Riverside really doesn't have a lot of room to grow. You're going to see a little bit in the sense of what's being done on the property adjacent to the WFCU center, adding a lot of units there. A couple of like kind of small type of developments, like at the corner of Edgar and Lozon, and again, like at the end of Fairview on Wyandotte. But absent that, like you're looking at an area that extends as far as Riverdale. There's not really a lot of spot to build. It's very suburban. It's got a lot of like detached homes. There's not a lot of townhomes in our ward. So it's just, there's a limited room for growth. And when you look at a realignment, just kind of based on what's happening east of Riverdale, like in that Bandwell development, and the areas around there, like if I'm looking down the road as anybody that's looking to run in Ward 6, and if you're looking at the long game past that next election, if it does grow, like it's going to grow to the east, I believe, just because that's where the kind of shift would be. And then when you move in that direction, I do think you're going to see a little bit more conservative lean to Ward 6. So you do see just kind of the demographics. There is a difference because you get even into the villages, like you're going to have a lot of lower income people in that area between Little River and in the CN tracks, and they're not necessarily lower income. They're just like in the sense of how they vote, but they don't tend to vote a lot. I can tell just kind of based on my experience with both the municipal election and the provincial election as well, right? Knocking for both of those, like you sense a difference in people's kind of motivation to vote. When you looked at some of the issues that existed in the provincial election versus the federal or the municipal election, people are less inclined to vote in the municipal election on, especially like that's just generally true, but especially in those areas in that pocket of like kind of Riverside. So that's kind of how I look at it. There are 2 distinct kind of demographics that you're trying to appeal to when you're running. And there's a lot of kind of smaller community issues that are, I guess, less prevalent in other wards, and some issues that just don't have the same impact, I think, as we'll probably discuss further in the show or later in the show.
Thanks for that insight there, Jason. Yeah, I mean, we'll get into the politics part of it, and so we'll hold off with getting to there right now. But it would be remiss for us not to bring Don in to further a conversation that we're having right now about where the opportunities for growth are, what you're seeing on the ground. I like to call these Developer Don segments.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just going to reiterate what those guys said, but it'll be funnier and cooler. So Yeah, if you look, I mean, Doug had mentioned earlier, Ward 6 and Ward 1 are very similar. And if you look pretty much basically just at the housing situation, Riverside and South Windsor subdivisions from back in the 1960s, 50s, 60s, and 70s were built at the same time. So you do have a lot of people that bought into those areas back then and just never moved. People who live in Riverside tend to stay in Riverside. Same with people who live in South Windsor. Ward 1 had more available land going south. So, I mean, obviously Southwood Lakes would have been the Southwood Lakes, Northwood Lakes, and then even, a bit past that, they built some new houses back there, and obviously higher end stuff. So yeah, the income brackets can be a little bit higher. I think what Jason said about the villages, or Little River Acres as we call them these days, that's changing too. I mean, the reality is those houses are now $450,000 houses. So, where traditionally it was a lot of lower income people, where a lot of renters were back there, and I mean, 20 years ago you could have bought those houses for $60,000. So they were great affordable starter homes for some people, but those are kind of getting weeded out. Yeah, as far as development goes, you guys nailed most of it over where Fari owned the Lear plant there. That's all going to be super high end stuff. That was all 900 plus. So you're looking at 900 to about 1.4 million to buy one of those over there. He is building a condo. I think it's going to be a rental units though. But again, even those rental units, he's building some there. Christian Lefebvre is building some right now right on Lozon. Yeah, but there's still, rents are going to be $2,000 plus in those places. So I think the income range is going to go up a bit in Ward 6. Ward 1, they'll continue to do the same thing. We're doing the comparison. Most of like Riverside Drive is built up in the areas between that. So it's going to be a lot of, I mean, the Valente built some condos over there just off of Wyandotte, just past Lozon Frank area. So I think you're gonna get some infill stuff. It'll be mostly high rise things after the Fari lands are built though, because there's just not a lot of land for big single family homes there, as opposed to when you get kind of south of Tecumseh Road to the other wards, you can keep going south.
Don, I'll keep with you for 1 second. We looked at the change here from the census numbers from 2016 to 21, and it was an increase of 2% for the ward. Are you expecting that from now until the next time the census numbers come out? Do you think it'll be a bigger increase than 2%, or do you think it would be still around that number?
I don't think it'll be much bigger, because even the new properties they're building, there's not a lot of them, just again because of land that's available. So even the Fari lands, I mean, they're building a few hundred over there, and I mean, I think the low rise is doing is only 5 or 6 floors. So you're probably going to talk, you're probably looking at about 500 new people coming to that just in buying those houses. So yeah, it might be a little higher next time, but you're probably still going to be in the the 5, 6, 700 people range, unless someone builds a couple super condos on Riverside Drive, they're 20 stories high or something.
So we're still in the same numbers then that we could expect if there was, for a ward update or reflection. No reason to go thinking that things would change, I guess, that dramatically.
Not much. The incomes might change again, and that's just the nature of across the board housing prices going up. But buying a house in Riverside, which every day of the week you could have picked one up for $250 till about 6 years ago. Well, now they're $700,000 now. So obviously you're talking different income brackets to be able to afford those properties.
Yeah, no doubt. Things are moving rapidly still down here. Doug, thank you so much for putting together that information there in the table setting, as we call it. Always very appreciative to be able to go through that demography data. And thank you to Fraser Fathers, of course, for giving Doug that data to be able to put together. So great team effort all around. Let's switch gears a little bit, and we'll go, I guess, as current as you can call current events for Ward 6 right now. We'll take a little bit look back at the last year. Up first, I guess the first thing to talk about, though, is the long-term serving city councilor, the longest term serving city councilor right now on council, Joanne Geniak, and whether or not we think she's going to be running. I put this in, I guess the projects category and not in the insight category that we're going to be doing after, because, it is a project with her, quite frankly. I mean, she is such a fixture Doug, I'll bring you in first after I go through this quote on it. Joanne Gignac has said, I don't like to focus on the election until it gets closer to the date when you have to file paperwork. I like to give residents the opportunity to think about it a little bit. If I get a strong indication that they're strongly supporting me, as they have in the past, then I throw my hat in the ring. I mean, that sounds to me like someone who's running. Doug, am I wrong in that assumption?
Well, it sounds like it. It certainly doesn't sound like she's, announcing her retirement. But if you're Joanne Gignac, why would you not keep your options open at this point? To me, we've looked at a number of wards now, and I can't help but notice the similarity between the declining vote totals for Joanne Gignac and the declining vote totals for Ed Sleeman. But if anything, Ms. Gignac's decline has been a lot starker than Sleeman. She is down to half her vote from 2010 as of 2018. And that is a significant drop. In one of the things I think you got to look at is the quality of competition. Who was the challenger? How strong was the challenger? And I'm looking at this list of names, and with all due respect to everyone involved, none of those second place finishers look like political juggernauts to me. Jeff Denemy in 2018, I don't think there is much to distinguish a Jeff Denemy from an Alex Denonville, for example. I don't think there's a lot to distinguish between them except for timing of when they chose to run. Jeff Denemy chose to run at a time when Joanne Gignac was seeking her 4th term after serving multiple terms on the school board. So she's been a fixture in elected office for decades at this point in Windsor. And I think there's some signs that the electorate is ready for a change, maybe ready to try out someone new. And I think for Joanne Gignac, she's got to be wondering who exactly is going to come in and challenge. And I think if there is a strong challenger or indications that she is going to face a serious challenge from a candidate with good name recognition and potentially a track record to run on, she may choose to bow out. I think there are some names. I don't know if we're at speculating on names time or not, but I think there are potentially some names out there that you could see make this jump and would represent a serious challenge to Joanne Gignac. The first one that comes to my mind is Kathy Cook. Kathy Cook serves on the school board. It is coterminous. Her wards are coterminous with Ward 6. She ran an exemplary school board campaign in 2018, took out an incumbent in 2018 and knocked Gail Simcoe Hatfield from 1st place to 2nd place in that college of school board trustees. Obviously has a golden political name in Windsor. The Cook family has been serving Windsor as elected representatives for many, many years. And should Kathy Cook choose to make a move from the school board level to the municipal level, I think she would represent a serious, serious challenge to Joanne Gignac. Sorry, John, you're muted. Oh, God, I love to say that.
Gosh darn it. Thank you, Doug, for that analysis. I got to agree with you. It's a seriously large, or it's a precipitous drop is the only way to put it. The results that she's had, I mean, it's a significant downward trend there. And I think you're right. If there is the right contender that would pop up, that would present a challenge, I think it's sort of like when you get that hole in one in golf and you can just walk away from the game and you're just never going to play again because you don't want to, lose the track record that you have. And, Councillor Gignac can really hold her head high. You can disagree with politics, and Lord knows we do that a lot on this show. But, being able to have a track record like she has is, it's really formidable. And it probably still does keep some very legitimate challengers out of the race. But we'll get back to that.
One more point I want to make on that. one of the challenges I think for an elected official is that you can't, it's a lot easier to slow it down than it is to ramp it back up. And what I mean by that is I don't know, and Jason, maybe you'll have some insight here, but I've got to believe that after this many times around, Joanne Geniac's 2018 campaign was probably not particularly energetic. I can't imagine that Joanne Geniac is still out knocking on doors for re-election, on her 4th, 5th try. So what happens if you suddenly face a serious challenge, a far more serious challenge than you have ever faced before for re-election? And now the sense is I've got to ramp this back up. I've got to go run this like it's 2006 and I'm running to earn this seat all over again. If you're Joanne Geniac, with everything that she's accomplished, with everything she's done in politics in this town, do you think that that's something that she would sign up for, with maybe a humiliation at the end of it?
No one wants to be humiliated, and let alone humiliated publicly in the press. That's not fun. Jason, let's give you, though, a response to what Doug's talking about here.
I think Doug's got a lot of good points, but we also have to look at politics is very current, right? Elections are very current. If we go back to 2018, the issues that were in the media at that point, some of the frustration that came with Councillor Geniac, those circumstances and that environment doesn't exist today. So like you can look back and there's some things that we kind of forget. Like I actually have my hat on for that at the moment too, is Miracle League. Well, that Miracle Park was something that was very controversial within the ward. It might not have gotten a lot of press outside of Riverside, but the fact that they wanted to turn that into a development and kind of make money off that did offend a lot of people within the community. Riverside baseball has got a very strong hold in that area specifically. So there's a lot of frustration with that. She ended up being on board with the Miracle League Park itself in getting that done, but it took a lot of work from people like Bill Kell, Tom Laporte with Riverside Minor Baseball. Farrow stepped in with some money. The Soltz family stepped in with some money, and kind of spearheaded that. So there's some frustration with that. There's also some frustration with a lot of basement flooding back then. We tend to forget that 5 years out, but there were, mine included, there were basements in Riverside flooding when City Council decided to spend a boatload of money on Christmas lights. At the very same time, it was happening as the meeting was happening. So when you go out 5 years, it's a lot easier to look at her numbers going down. And Jeff Denemy was very active in social media, very active at the doors, very active in the community at that point in time. It was easy to kind of chip away at what Geniac had going on, just because of the unpopularity of certain things that were happening at that point in time. Is there that malaise right now within the ward? And I don't know if that exists. So then you take that next step when we're talking about, will Geniac run if somebody of substance challenges her? Does that person of substance challenge her with the name recognition, with the track record, knowing that the malaise isn't necessarily there this time? And what message are they coming in with? And that's the kind of the trick to that ward, is it does kind of favor that fiscal prudence, and as much as I think that's BS with a lot of votes they've made over the years. Is somebody willing to kind of jeopardize what they perceive as their political future by getting hammered by a more popular Geniac, right? Not that she's more popular, she's less unpopular. And so when you try and make that decision, like I did in 2014, it is a challenge, right? You're looking at, is this person beatable? Are you able to fund your campaign? Are you able to get the volunteers that are going to go knock doors? Because it doesn't matter how active of a campaigner you are, it's going to take a team to go out and beat Geniac. Even when she was unpopular, she still got a majority of the vote with 4 candidates. So it's not that decrease isn't always telling when you're going from election to election, because again, some issues happen, right? And there are things that surround that some Riverside residents may not remember from 4 years ago.
I think those are really good points, and I really appreciate the local perspective. I just want to bring a couple of numbers to the table here. 2018 election, English Public Trustee, wards 5, 6, 7, 8, 2 to be elected. Winner overall, Kathy Cook, 7,629 votes. That is 33.6% of the votes, which means that she was on more than 65% of the ballots selected Kathy Cook as one of their representatives. I just want to bring that to the conversation. That is an awful lot of votes for a trustee candidate. That is an incredible result for a trustee candidate. I'm just saying that if Kathy Cook, who knocked Gail Simcoe Hatfield down to second place, decides to take a run at Ward 6, she would be extremely dangerous. But I take your point that some of the drivers of Geniac's depressed 2018 vote may not be there right now.
Yeah, and you gotta, like, I understand, like, I take your point as well, but like Kathy Cook, if she does eye a deeper political future than city council, like there's some risk to losing to Geniac as well. So it's just kind of weighing those factors on both sides, and without the I guess the things that may have suppressed her vote or depressed her vote 4 years ago, like there are factors for other people that might be looking into it that may be a little bit more concerning when you look at kind of the mood of the ward and see where people are. Like if there might not be that discontent this time, which I can tell you as somebody that is certainly not a fan of Councillor Geniac's politics. I do appreciate her as a person. Like we've gotten a chance to talk on multiple occasions, but when you're that malaise isn't there right now, and it was 4 years ago. Like people had a visceral dislike for some of the decisions that she had made, for kind of how she had backed out of them and found a way to get on the right side of things, and people were upset with that. So I don't see that there. I don't hear that there from the people that I talk to in my community. So it might be there, and just not with the people that I talk to. But I just don't. I'm not to say that Kathy Cook isn't a formidable candidate that could come out and do something. It's just if she's eyeing a run, like there's also that factor too that she has to look at, right?
Yep, absolutely. John, I'm just going to steal the show from you for a second, because I want to ask a question.
Away.
I want to ask Jason a question while we're chatting about basement flooding. So you brought it up in the conversation that we just had a moment ago, and I really want to get a local perspective. So since we had those intense floods 5 years ago, is there a sense in Ward 6 that the city's investments and remediation efforts have been sufficient? Do you think that is not a hot issue anymore as long as current trends continue?
I'd agree with that. Like I know personally, like there have been probably 3-4 big rainfalls in the last couple of years, and I didn't need to bail out my basement. So that's been nice. I haven't heard any flooding troubles from other people locally. 3-4 years ago was probably the last one. That was the once in a century storm that we'll probably get every 4 or 5 years now.
We're due.
And it's not the issue that it used to be. So because it was happening frequently. Like I would probably flood at least once every year or once every 2 years. And like I didn't have a finished basement, so it was more junk that needed to be taken care of than anything else. But for people that were finishing their basements and doing it over and over again, it was definitely a serious like sign of frustration, which I don't think exists anymore, or it does, at least not to the same extent.
John, I can't believe
Funny
I
the
got to
second
do
time
this
too.
twice.
I'm here. It's interesting though. These once in 100-year storms, and we are due, as you just said there, Doug. Maybe this will be the thing, right? Maybe there'll always just be a little bit of an opportunity to get at Gignac because of that terrible, terrible vote that was done years ago. I forgot about the onslaught of memes, Jason, that came out at that time. I forgot how juxtaposed it was, that the flooding was happening as they were actually making the vote. It's funny how when you get caught up inside of the issue and then it goes on, you forget what the entrance was to it. And yeah, what a crazy council meeting. That must have been awful for them. That was before the mayor's office had a fancy PR firm to even get them through it. Well,
the only thing I want to say additionally on flooding is that I think that it's good policy for anybody who's considering running for office, no matter how bad you want to win. Please don't root for your neighbors to experience millions of dollars in property damage to improve your political fortunes.
Yeah, no, that's bad. It makes for good joke fodder, but yeah, don't actually do it. That'd be really silly. And just cruel, just evil stuff. Let's go on, unless Don, you want to say something specifically here. I completely railroaded you out of that conversation though. Sorry.
No, the only thing I really wanted to add for people watching the video of the show, obviously Doug and John have started going to the same barber. So it's kind of a weird hair-based games of shirts versus skins here in this show. So it's
well, I still won't go to the hairdresser yet, but I have been going to Doug's, and I just hang out in the backyard and he does some snipping.
Oh, Doug's cutting your hair now. Nice.
It's great. That's why it's so similar.
Yeah, the only thing I would say, I think a lot of it again goes back to demographics in that area. For people who pay attention, Joanne doesn't even really campaign that much. She just kind of lives off her name. And when you have older people who have been in the ward forever, it's a little, name recognition is very important. And like Jason said, as long as Sharknadoes don't start falling from the sky, people probably aren't going to be pissed off others, so she'll probably just kind of slide right in again.
Yeah, I mean, there's the apathetic way to look at it, but that's why we got you.
I got to make a hair joke and threw in Sharknado in the show. You don't get that every week, people.
Go for the Don trifecta. Come on, you just got to say something super insensitive about one of the people we discuss on the show.
Oh, we got like 20 minutes. I'll get it.
Again, thank you to those of us who support us on patreon.com/Rose City Politics. That all goes to Don, who spends a lot of his days just sitting, coming up with these riffs that he'll go on the show. So it's, money well spent, I think, quite frankly. Let's keep, though, we're going to run through this. We don't want to get too caught up in the current events, but that one there, that was a bit special. So we'll do a bit of a round robin around the group here. Mega Hospital. Councillor Gignac said that losing the mega hospital would be one of the, quote, scary issues moving into the next election. Obviously, she's fully on board with the location of where it is. I could see why there is the concern that she would espouse about that. She was echoing sentiments that were from Councillor Francis, which said basically the same thing, or at least that's how it was presented in the Windsor Star article. I guess I agree with that to her. I mean, it's been years of fighting for this. And if you put all of your eggs into one basket, you certainly don't want to, lose out on it. Jason, bring you in first on it real quick. What are your thoughts about the mega hospital and its significance over the past year?
Well, I think if it becomes an issue in the campaign, it's going to be one that Gignac wins on. She's been for it where it is, to be honest. The demographics, as we talk about, we are a little bit older in our ward, would tend to lean towards the most convenient location for people that live in Riverside. It's right down the road. It's a lot closer from a lot of the people in Ward 6 that are less community. I don't want to say less community minded, but more, I guess, focused on using the new hospital as a community planning tool. They are happy with where it is. It's in a location that's easily accessible to them. It's convenient in that sense. You just hop on Lozon and drive down the road, right? So, and I do think a lot of people in that community want that hospital and they want it built now, sooner rather than later. I know when I was knocking on doors in 2014, that was the consensus. It was something that I focused on at the provincial level, and something that I heard a lot of discussion about at the municipal level in the summer. So yeah, I think if that does if that's one of the horses that people are going to try and ride, I don't think it would be necessarily a successful ballot box question for them.
So I think it's really interesting that this came up in comments from both Geniac and Francis, because to Jason's point, these are the two wards that are the least likely to end up electing someone who is anti-mega hospital, just because of the demographics of the two wards and their attitudes. Both Ward 1 and Ward 6, I would suggest, are two of the wards that have the strongest support for a County Road 42 location, and all you have to do is look at a map to see why. I think Jason's right on there. But isn't it interesting that both Francis and Geniac identified that as a reason why they may choose to run again, to secure, this this investment, this hospital, this whatever. But I would ask the question, against whom? Who is going to run in Ward 1 or 6 and win on a platform of screw the mega hospital? Nobody. So why would they say that?
Well, just don't you think it's just early campaigning? And that to me would say that she's running again.
Well, I think
I think she's scared.
I think that there is an element of coordination there. When two politicians say basically the same thing, you have to wonder where they both got it from. And I wonder if that doesn't point to an electoral strategy for the 2022 election overall. Perhaps this will play into the mayoral campaign, and perhaps this narrative will be used to shore up some of the weaker incumbents around the table. I'm just speculating, but it really struck me that they both talked about something that was never going to happen as a reason why they might run again.
Yeah,
Well,
if you look at it, sorry, go ahead, Jason.
Go ahead, Don.
Well, I was just going to say, I think you're right, because if you look at the wards that would not be in favor of the location, some of those are the ones that are afraid of losing to further left-leaning candidates. So yeah, I think you might be right. There's a concerted effort to make sure, someone like Ed Sleeman gets reelected because he's a shoo-in vote. And, that ward could easily go to someone who is very anti-mega hospital, and that is a good campaign strategy in that area.
Let's just be clear. We're talking about the anti-mega hospital location, not the,
Yeah,
I don't think anybody's.
There's the anti-healthcare vote is not worth mentioning.
Yeah. Well, just for clarity,
Yeah.
I do think there is I do think it's I would assume it's a strategy, not necessarily based at the ward level either. Like Don does have a point. Like I do think that's definitely meant to maybe give some of the councillors that tend to vote with the mayor a little bit of breathing room. But there's also a councillor that's been rumored to be running for mayor that if the mayor can kind of put some space between him and Councillor Bordelin out in Ward 3, it's not just a ward-based strategy. There's a big picture, some worries about losing kind of the balance of power where it is right now. And if they lose a couple of councillors, it becomes a lot harder to get the mayor's agenda through, and the agenda of people like councillors like Geniac and Francis.
I am waxing up my signs as we speak. So
why do they need to be waxed, Don? What the hell are you doing to your
They got to be
signs?
seen.
They got to be, you need reflective, very shiny. I like to set the tone for a shiny, clean downtown, Doug. Don't ruin my strategy for me.
Okay. You made me lose completely my train of thought.
That's the only reason I come here every week, John.
Okay, John, you can have it back. I don't know what I was going to say.
Okay, well that's good job, Don. That's great. Let's go on then. After Mega Hospital, Peace Fountain comes up. 48-year-old Peace Fountain needs to be replaced right now. The city has extensive PR and consultation campaign right now. It's the most polished website I've ever seen for something the city has done, soliciting input. It has graphics, it has photos, it has videos. It's a full timeline of the Peace Fountain from start to now. I only say this because we've seen other consultation processes in the city, which just didn't look so nice. You can tell which ones the city really cares about, or at least those that are, pushing these things. They're also asking for residents' input and memories of the Peace Fountain to be able to come up with what to do next with it. I like the Peace Fountain. It's great. I remember going there as a kid. It was a big landmark at night. Lovely to go there when the lights are on. I hope that, personally it's replaced to a way that it keeps its look, but if they want to go, and I don't know, go put like another streetcar or something near it, maybe that's going to be their prerogative. There might be another one that could be found somewhere, or maybe we do a train or something this time, or a car. But Peace Fountain, I give it A+. I like it. I want to though figure out, Jason, what your thoughts are about the Peace Fountain.
Well, I think this is where like you see that difference in demographics, right? Like the difference in what people kind of focus on. Because when we talk about that lower income, and by lower income, I do mean relative lower income. Like when we look into that area, kind of in like what we're Little River Acres, the villages, it's not necessarily lower income people, it's just lower income comparatively, relatively speaking, to that kind of north side of Wyandotte, between that and Riverside Drive, right? Like when you look at people in Little River Acres, for example, like the community that lives there, like part of their worries are going to be not necessarily flooding, although like that could be a concern for those in that neighborhood, but like natural gas utilities and things like that. So they're not heating their house with electric baseboards, right? Like something that would make it more economical to move there. And then you look at something like the Peace Fountain, like I don't necessarily think that demographic cares about the Peace Fountain. Like they're more worried about heating their home in the winter. Like if the power goes out, they're screwed, right? And for the most part, that's true. But like when you're looking at the Peace Fountain, it's a unique group of people that are just kind of like it's a nice thing to look at. But are we spending a lot of money on something that is just there to look at? Like it's a nice community piece, but I'm not sure how many votes that's going to drive in a municipal election.
Don, you're watching people buying places and selling places. Does the Peace Fountain draw?
Yeah, there's a big anti-Peace Fountain contingent out there. Just
I'll live anywhere in the city as long as it's nowhere near the
Peace Fountain. That's if you look right there, what's across the street? You got a bunch of high-rise condos, which again tends to be higher income, older people. So yeah, you might garner some votes there just because the whole reason for buying one of those condos is you get to look at the park across the street. I think what Jason was saying was probably, this is a demographics thing again. This is, we love our Peace Fountain. It's been there for 50 years, but don't build a sidewalk on my street so those damn kids walk on my lawn. So I think that's what we're looking at. So I don't think you're gonna get a lot of people who are anti-Peace Fountain. If they put a new one in, there's no way in hell I'm voting for Joanne.
Yeah, I think the politics of the Peace Fountain and full disclosure, I don't think I've ever even seen the damn thing. So take my opinion for what it's worth. But to me,
Doug was going to the submarine races in the parking lot, so he didn't want to get around to the fountain.
People say Ontario ends at London. Where does Windsor end for you, Doug?
Walker Road.
What or
Walker Road.
Okay. Just wanted to clarify.
That wasn't even a joke response, Doug. You just hard responded Walker Road.
Yes.
It's not a joke for the province either.
I might venture east of Walker once in a while, but not that often, not if I can help it. So the Peace Fountain, I think, is one of those things that the threat of losing an amenity is maybe something that people would notice. Losing the Peace Fountain might have an impact. I'm not so sure that people are clamoring for hundreds of thousands or millions to be spent refurbishing this thing. But I think if it were to go away or if it were to disappear, I certainly think that there would be a lot of people who were upset about that. And, it's probably more of preventing a negative reaction than hoping for a positive reaction.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
So we've talked about flooding, obviously, a bit earlier. There has been $4 million that's been passed for East Lawn, replacing, getting some new new widened asphalt roads. We've talked about that before, not so much walking trails as it is maintenance access paths that people can also use. There is the extension of the sidewalk in the South Block to meet accessibility standards of today. But there is new money, of course, included for upgraded water mains, storms, and sanitary sewers. We talked about flooding, so I'll let Jason just have the one response on this one. Do you think that it's still something that is going to be able to be campaigned on as heavily as it's been in the past?
Well, I just mean, like, GNAC has the receipts, right? Like, they invested this money. So it's another tough spot. Like, for all her fault, she's not a bad politician. Like, she knows what she's doing when she spends money, when she lobbies for money to be spent. In that sense, that's a campaign tool. Like, she serves the community. Like, she gets things done, and she's able to do that partly through politicking, but investing that money, she can go to the Riverside, like the people of Riverside, because for all intents and purposes, like, that's the ride, like, that's the ward, right? And she can go to the people of Riverside and say, look, this is what I did. This is what I did to mitigate this issue. And I know personally, I haven't had any issues lately. I haven't heard of a whole lot of people having issues. So if people are seeing that, if people haven't had that once in a century storm, like the Sharknado that we're going to see in the summer, possibly, like, you're not worried about it. And she can say, look, I solved this problem, or I've done my best to solve this problem. And it's hard to come at her with that. Like, like, I can say, if and this isn't a joke, like, there's a serious possibility that she could cast a vote to spend a boatload of money to fix the Peace Fountain, or put a boblo boat out there instead. And basements could flood the next day. And then that immediately turns the flooding issue back into an issue, and the Peace Fountain into an issue. Like, it's all circumstance based, right? Like, sometimes politics is just what happens and when it happens.
That's such a good way to put it. I also like how you said, she does have the receipts. There's no way to argue with it. She can walk up and down the streets and say, look what I did. And if your house didn't flood, you can thank GNAC for that.
Yeah, she'll probably have other people walking up and down the streets for her, but yeah.
Well, thank you for that. We will keep going, though. Helicopters, big deal in the ward, or at least it seems like it was a big deal in the city as well. We had Councillor GNAC make a lot of noise about it. Tourism companies have been operating helicopters. Of course, we're in COVID. People haven't had things to do. And so there's been some tourism companies that have decided to do runs of, the Detroit River, which makes sense. But it's a lot funnier when you say tourism companies and Ward 6 as the attraction. Maybe they're looking at the Peace Fountain, though. Let's be honest. It's a gorgeous, gorgeous space. GNAC says, quote, operating a venue like this should not infringe on other people's rights, homeowners' rights, especially if it's an American outfit. What did you hear, Jason, about this? What do you feel about this one?
Like, I live about 3 blocks away from the river, right? So, like, it never really was an issue for me. Like, I didn't hear that much of it. Like, maybe the trees muffled the sound, and a lot of the people living on Riverside Drive that probably got the brunt of that sound. Like, I can imagine it's an issue. But again, like, when we start getting into campaign issues, like, who's in favor of having, like, being woken up or being kept up or being annoyed? Like,
let me make fun of it, man. It's just too funny.
What I would like to see is, I would like to see somebody campaign on trying to outbid her on this. Like, I want to see someone's literature calling for an air exclusion zone over Ward 6.
Yeah, like, I don't, like, I get bothered by planes more often in a day than I would get bothered by a helicopter, like that flight path into Metro, right? Like, it's not, I don't know. It's one of those things that when I saw it in the paper, I was just like, am I not hearing it? Like, I spent a lot of time outside, like at that time, it was like coaching baseball and stuff, and I just don't hear this. So, like, I don't know. It's one of those things that, again, like, you're looking at campaign issues. If somebody comes at that, like, I just don't understand. Like, unless maybe they'll root for truck horns too, and to kind of overpower that sound. I just don't know.
To me, it's the epitome of the Simpsons joke, like Grandpa Simpson yelling at the clouds in the sky. Exactly. Get out of here. You could have a candidate who starts running for more helicopters, but we want the operator in Ward 6. At least then we'll have some control over it. Anyone else have anything to add though about the helicopters there before we keep going?
Well,
Yeah.
I find when I land my helicopter in the park behind my house, people kind of get upset. But since real estate prices have gone up, I've obviously got a jet now as opposed to a helicopter. I'm not, a peasant. So but again, and I'm going to keep going back to demographics on this. Come on, man, that was funny. This is, noisy helicopters. It's another old people problem. It's, like John said with Grandpa Simpson, yelling at the clouds. That's what this is. And, I think the helicopters really picked up because of COVID. People were using them to go back and forth across the border. There was a service going back and forth for a few grand. You could fly you in, fly you out, so you could skip all the border stuff. So, yeah, I mean, next thing will be yelling at boats because they're too loud on the water and you live on Riverside Drive. So,
hey, last thing here before we dive into a bit more of the analysis of it, but we're running towards we're getting towards the end of the show here. But cannabis consumption patio, and I'm not just trying to pull the weed card out here because of who I am. I went through like 6 or 7 Google pages about just Ward 6, trying to find the major issues that popped up. And let me tell you, like around page 4, you get to like 2016 and 2017 articles. It's not ripe. And then a lot of them are just, Councillor Gignac commenting on what's going on. But cannabis consumption patio, after residents and the councillor herself expressed outrage, a cannabis retail store abandoned their plans to open up an attached outdoor consumption patio. Would have been the first one in the region, quite frankly, to allow that. Councillor Gignac's quote was, "When it comes to consumption, there are issues with respect to secondhand inhalation of cannabis smoke that severely impacts people with respiratory problems." We can get into that, whatever. It's Councillor Gignac. She's going to say what she's going to want to say about cannabis. Jason, the neighborhood, though, for those of us, specifically Doug, who refused to venture anywhere in this area, could you explain, the placement and like what would the impact of a patio actually have been on the neighborhood itself, if you know where it is specifically?
Well, I think at that point you're just getting into NIMBYism, and that's fine. Like it's your neighborhood. You want things in your backyard. That's your right to voice that opinion. As far as like, you do have to kind of assess the, like with cannabis or anything. Like if I'm a cigar smoker, right? So like I have no place in public where I can consume my cigar. Granted, it's not medical. So I'm not going to make that argument like that. They're
you got to find a better doctor.
They're certainly not exact parallels, but they're like Gignac's just going to use the cover of the Smoke Free Ontario Act and municipal bylaws and just move on from there. I've had a chance to attend ward meetings in person with her, and it's her position and it's a valid position. I don't know if there's necessarily the outcry that was kind of presented to the public, but I also do believe that there are a lot of people that aren't comfortable with it, right? And so if you're turning that into a political issue, you have to again be aware of that. There's and then we look at the demographics again. There's an older population that may not necessarily be as comfortable with that in their backyard, and then you do the math from there. So as a political issue, I'm not sure if it would be a winner or loser. I haven't had a chance to knock on a whole lot of doors lately, so I'm not sure what the opinion would be on that. From a political perspective, I don't see it as a winner, because I think ultimately, at the end of the day, Gignac's going to be on the winning side of that with the residents of the ward.
Yeah, fair. Anyone else here have anything to add? Doug, I see.
When was that? When did this all go down, John?
Oh, that was very recently. I'm going to just burn some time for just a second getting through this sentence. That was November 1st of last year.
Okay, that's really interesting.
So, coming into it, right?
As we were talking about it, I was thinking it's been a long time since 2018. And I think attitudes have softened quite a bit based on experience. there were folks who wanted to paint a picture of basically bedlam and dogs and cats living together and all kinds of terrible things that were going to happen. And 4 years down the road, we just haven't seen it materialize. But to Jason's point, I guess in a ward with such a high percentage of folks over 65, who, you know, they may not be updating their views based on what's happening around them, and rather thinking back to Nancy Reagan on TV in 1983 or whatever they might be thinking of. Maybe it's, you know, maybe those attitudes are just frozen and this is how it's going to be. But I'm surprised that that's something that would be such a big problem in 2022.
Well, you got to be careful because when you're at a certain age, you don't want the cannabis smoke mixing with your Xanax and painkillers you have to take every day because everything hurts. So there is a medical reason for this.
There's the voice of experience there, Don.
100%. Everything hurts all the time.
Sorry to hear that, buddy.
Yeah. Well, my cigars are medical. I have a prescription for them. So.
That's good.
I need to talk to your doctor.
It's 2 boxes of Cahibas every month.
Hey, Ramona loans over here. That's all I got. So,
John, third time. Buddy.
That wasn't me. I haven't done anything.
You're so full of shit. Your mouth was moving the whole time.
Yeah, but the mute wasn't on.
Okay. We believe
Anyways,
you.
please do. The little button would have said red. Anyways, you know, it's Counselor Geniac's shtick. It works for her. You have to predict or assume, excuse me, that it works amongst her voters. I mean, at least the diehards. She lost, you know, that 50% that you talked about there, Doug, from you know, where she was at the election prior. That core group there has to be the ones that she is absolutely governing for, because she doesn't want to at least lose that block there. But with that, that gets us to the end of our, you know, hot topics, current events, if you will. We went a bit longer, but it's always fun with these types of episodes. You're coming here because you really want this level of insight on these Ward Watch shows. Doug, I'm going to hand it off to you though, and I'll let you give us just a bit of your analysis as to where things are going. But I will tee it up with, you know, Don, we've all been talking about how Ward 6 and Ward 1 are similar, you know, that lockstepness in between the two counselors there, similar wards. We've seen their messaging has been, you know, very aligned. The issues that they both work towards are very aligned, but we did see a bit of a break to a certain, no, excuse me, that was a break with Mayor Dilkins. They were still aligned when it came to the Beacon changes through Councillor Geniac's motion. But so Doug, what's your analysis as to, I guess, where are things going to be going with this? And I'll let you just take it sort of where you want to go, and I'll jump in.
Yeah, so I think we had a good chat today, chewing over the you know, the electoral history of the ward and talking about what might happen. I think everything hinges on whether or not Ms. Geniac chooses to run again. To Jason's point, that probably would preclude a lot of people who might have an interest from jumping in. If you fast forward to May, June, and you're not seeing any strong contenders coming in, it's, you know, it'll be Geniac's no matter how much effort and energy a first timer puts into it. I don't expect that we're going to see a returning candidate. So I think it all comes down to whether Ms. Geniac chooses to run again or not. And I'm just going to leave that dark horse Kathy Cook scenario there for everybody to think about, because that would be one heck of a fun election to watch.
Thanks. Don, you want to jump in?
Yeah, I want to point out to Jason and the viewers and listeners that if you notice, John always first goes to Doug because of his anti-baldness status that he has. So I find it all very offensive. I'm catching another pattern here. Yeah, you know, after everything we said about everything, I think some, you know, I'm just going to say it. I don't know what you guys feel, but I think Joanne gets reelected because she is a good city councilor. She has the time to do the work. I mean, we know they don't get paid very much, so you get a lot of people who are working second jobs, and I don't believe Joanne has a second job. So she puts in the time, puts in the work. She serves her constituents. She's you know, some people say she's too conservative, but I'm the conservative on this panel, so I'm cool with that. So I think she represents her people well. And so I don't want it to come off thinking that we're just here bashing Joanne, that, you know, she has a cakewalk. She's actually doing a good job, I think. So I don't think there's any issues with her getting reelected again if she wanted to. I'm just sucking up because I'm going to move out there pretty soon.
Welcome
No,
to the
I-
neighborhood.
Listen, I mean, I said this at the top as well. You're right. I mean, she does get reelected. She's been in this game a long time. She knows how to play the game. Now, having said that, she's lost a lot of the vote count, so the game is changing, and she's been in it a long time. We'll see how it all progresses. Jason, though, anything that you want to add from, you know, just riff? Give us your analysis here.
I do love a good riff. Going to Don's point though, like there's some truth to the fact that she's a solid city councilor. She works hard. She listens to her constituents. Like I'll go back to the Miracle League issue. And she was obviously not in favor of the development that ended up there, which was the Miracle League Park and the Miracle League field itself. But when presented with arguments, when presented with community support, Gignac ended up on the right side of that. And so as much as I like historically have disagreed with a lot of the things that Councillor Gignac has done, she does work hard for the constituency. She does get back to email. She does reply. Like people that have talked to her say she's very good to deal with. I usually get a pretty prompt response from her when I do inquire about things. So it's, or historically I haven't had to in a while because, you know, no basement flooding. But I think at the end of the day, if she runs, she's going to win. And that discourages a lot of people from getting into the race. You're like, even with Doug's Kathy Cook scenario, like I still think, I think that might discourage Joanne from running, but if Joanne's set on running and set on kind of keeping the balance of power as much as she can contribute to that in running for council, like I think it's her race to lose. And I just don't see how she does. Like at the end of the day, she knows where to put the money to get the votes that she needs. Like a lot of the money has been put into areas where just from my experience are more likely to vote. When you look at precinct data from the provincial side, it's just she caters to the areas that vote more. And like that's the community too. Like that she's catering to the community, she's catering to their needs, but like she's not naive. She knows the people that are going to show up on election day. And like my opinion is at the end of the day, if she runs, she's going to win. Even if with a solid challenger, if she thinks that she's got the hustle in her to knock on doors, she wins. And if she doesn't want that fight though, then that's a different story. Like if she gets out, it's a wide open race, and somebody like Kathy Cook could come in and walk away with it, or you could see a fight between people like Denonville and Denemy from the last time, but you should see people coming from who ran in other wards, right? Where you just have to be a resident of the city. So you might see a Joy Wright slide in from Sleeman's ward or anything like that. So it's an interesting dynamic, but at the end of the day, I think if Joanne chooses to run, then she's going to be safe, and she could probably screw down that name placard right into the desk.
Yeah, you know, let's take the scenario that you're saying here, that she does run, and you know, or it's hers to lose, as you said. But let me throw a curveball into it. Let's say that Mayor Dilkins, you know, things go crazy and he's not running for any reason. I don't think that Councillor Gignac would be looking at running for mayor now against Mayor Dilkins. There's no reason for that. But let's say there's a scenario where, I don't know, somehow he gets tapped to run in the provincial election for the PCs. Someone steps aside. Do you think that Councillor Gignac would do something like that? Do you think that she has it in her to run for mayor at this point? We've talked about it before, that the opportunity was far stronger in the past. What do you think about this, you guys?
Could have done it in
I think
2014 if she wants it. She would have won in 2014, no question.
I don't see her wanting to do that at this point in time. I think there's at least one other member of council that would probably bring that name back to the mayor's office. If you're looking for the right left opponent, like not letting say the councillor in Ward 3 run unopposed to kind of steer the truck into oncoming traffic as they would see it. So yeah, I don't know, like if that situation, if Dilkins wanted to go back to law practice and ran as a progressive conservative in the next provincial election, I think that would be a questionable decision. But if that was his end goal, was to go back to law practice, then yeah, I think I think Freddie would probably be the guy that you would see on the ballot versus Councillor Gignac. Not to say that I don't think she would do a great job as a candidate. I just don't think that's the dynamic that this city council has right now.
I also,
sorry, go.
well, I was just gonna say, I also think it's very important that people understand the appeal of being that ship captain that goes over to Pesh Island. I mean, Drew really loves putting on the captain hat and sailing that sucker over there. So that alone could draw him away from being the mayor.
I was gonna say that, like, Mayor Dilkins is not going back to practice law. Mayor Dilkins, with all of the media exposure that his new staff have been able to gin up for him, is absolutely landing a job on Sirius XM radio as, like, you're catching the news with Drew, and then he's gonna just, be Drew. I think I'd tune in.
He really did a good job, pounded his hand on the desk yesterday on Power and Politics and on CBC. So
he was on CNN too.
Yeah, I saw that.
He kept both hands on the desk. He didn't pull a Tobin there, so
keeping it classy, Don.
There you go. Had to insult somebody.
Right. When Don's making jerk off jokes, it's time.
Hey! It's a kid show. Come on, man. Keep it family friendly here.
The kids aren't going to get the reference to Tubin. They don't know. Like, oh,
exactly. That's why you don't have to say anything.
It's like when I was a kid and I was hearing all this stuff about the Lewinsky scandal and just like, what does any of this stuff mean? Why does it matter?
Go ahead. Make the cigar joke, Jason. Come on. So one of us has to do it.
Oh my God.
I'll abstain.
Somebody wants to run again.
Well, I'm gonna pull the plug on this one quickly before we get any other places. Ladies, folks, we've been here. This is Rose City Politics. It is February the 9th. Our regular panel tonight included myself, John Lidke, Doug Sartori, Don Merrifield Jr., and we had a guest panelist tonight, Jason Dupuis. Thank you so much, Jason, for joining us. We really appreciate it.
Always a great time, guys.
Yeah, this has been Ward Watch 2022, Ward 6. We will be back next week talking about Ward 7, of course. Head over to patreon.com/Rose City Politics. Give us your money. We always appreciate a new Patreon. I'm cutting right to it, Don. I'm getting right to the core of the issue. We are in BizX Magazine and at bizxmagazine.com. Our current issue just dropped in print and online, where we talk about where council and politics really is going from here through the end of the year. And I will give you a bit of a sneak peek. We also have a new column that we're writing. We will be talking about council compensation. So send us your thoughts about it, unless you're going to be sending them to us after Friday at 2 p.m., in which case we don't care what you have to say, because the column will be submitted by that point. So get to it really quickly. Rose City Politics, we're on all your favorite social media and podcasting apps, and Rose City Politics is able to broadcast live on tape thanks to the kind support of Leuna 625, Building Better Communities. Sorry I wasn't here last week, folks, but I will be here next week again. Thanks for tuning in.